Hey everyone, so we have a really interesting deal here today, and this is by request of someone from YouTube. So shout out, I forgot to look up your name just before the recording, but shout out to you for mentioning dumpster rental businesses because they are quite interesting. This one we're looking at here today is actually a franchise, and we're going to look at some inside info that they apparently may not have wanted to share, but for whatever reason is on their listing. So we're going to look at this one in a little bit more detail than we might other companies. But we're going to make sure that some of the confidential stuff that they shouldn't have shared is not shared in terms of names and things like that. So this is dumpster rental and debris removal company asking 1.1 million. It's a franchise, and so that's why you see the cash flow versus asking is really only 2 times, a little bit over that. But good revenue, 1.6 million in revenue, which is very strong for a franchise. Lots of inventory. This is probably in relation to their dumpster, like their actual rental dumpster units. And they have some, pretty decent sized business when all is said and done, right? It's 6 employees, 5 trucks, 135 dumpsters. So really their business entirely runs by just increasing this inventory of dumpsters, which likely because it's a franchise, you have to buy through the franchise company. And so they're probably marked up and all that. So there's not an easy way. Whereas if this was a private company, you can buy used dumpster units for probably very, very cheap and be able to deploy. So there's a path to scale here, but it's going to be a little bit pricey. But the good thing is owner retirement. It's a franchise, meaning very low price point, high cash flow. But this is going to be a cash flow business, not a value generation business. And what I mean by that, and I think I mentioned this in a few other videos, is with franchises, you are limited on how you sell the company. Typically, franchise businesses are structured to be good for cash flow, but when you go to sell, there's limitations to how they want you to value it, limitations on what price points you're allowed to offer it at, because the franchise company doesn't make money on that sale, right? They make money when someone is operating the business. And so if you go and try and get a 4 times value on that business, you stop worrying about the operations, cash flow drops while you're trying to sell it. Now all of a sudden that franchise company is in trouble because they're not collecting as many fees from you. So that's the one thing to keep in mind here. But franchise companies can be very profitable for stacking cash, as you'll see with this one, right? 500,000 in profit. You're only going to pay 2 years worth of cash for it. I'm going to make the assumption when I look through the numbers here that an owner salary is not already removed from this. But you'll be able to dividend out yourself a couple $100,000 a year plus $100,000 a year salary. You're going to be doing well for yourself. This is good for kind of a single owner operator that can manage it in some pretty low amount of time because you have enough cash here to place in a general manager. You have enough cash there to make this very passive for yourself. So interesting business, dumpster rentals. It's really all about going and dropping these things off, picking them up, worrying about the disposal. There's not a lot of heavy operations. This is kind of what I'd akin into the same pocket as storage units and things like that. It's, there's a delivery and pickup aspect, but there's no active service, right? You're not really dealing with people capital in sense of like an HVAC where you're dealing with technicians and all that, and you got to worry about drive time and all this other stuff. It's, you pick it up, you drop it off, and while it's there, you're collecting cash every single day. So it's an awesome business for sure. But some things to kind of keep in mind here before I go through the numbers. This is a document, so you're not normally going to see this, but as you can see right here, they uploaded it right to the listing. Meanwhile, this should be under an NDA. And I'm gonna blur out their names and things. You're probably gonna see some blur elements here because I don't want to share info that they really shouldn't be sharing. But you can see in this document the reality of it, which is very strong. I'm going to skip past some of the stuff and really look at this. So growth year over year, these guys have crushed being able to scale in business here. And obviously, I mean, they've seen a good uptake as a result of hurricanes and otherwise. But I mean, this is Florida. This stuff's not going to go away. So they've seen some really good growth here, and they've really driven that growth. So they actually, put in the work here, even though they're going to retirement. And even in the year, last year, they've done really well. So the biggest thing to understand is 2024 on track for similar, in which case, like these guys actually care about their business. And that's a good thing, especially for folks going to retire. It means not going to just let it go by the wayside while you're trying to close over 2 months. But overall, great growth. They have a work from home little lease here, and that's really awesome. And they have an employee structure here, which I'm just going to blur out. We're not going to look at that, just because again, I don't want to share stuff that they really shouldn't have shared. But they have an employee structure that includes some type of little level management, which you can further flesh out to make this more passive. They get a lot of repeat customers, which is perfect. That does mean that they have good relationships here. They don't specify what it is, but I would imagine they've built some good relationships with, fix and flip folks and things like that are going to continuously be needing this. And so as a result of that, that's, high value, lifetime value of customers. But they also have the benefits of having all this backed by a franchisor who's also helping them with their SEO and stuff like that. So a lot of the marketing side is not really going to be a focus here. It's going to be, how do you flesh out your management? How do you flesh out your relationships to get these folks that are going to continuously be repeating, rather than the one-off that goes here and there, which, it's always good for cash, but it's not what's going to strengthen your cash flow. And again, when you're not in a value-based business, you're in a business that's all about the cash flow. That repeat revenue is significant. That means you can make this a passive cash flow business, because that you're not going to get a 5 times value or 10 times value on your sale. And so you can use this as a starting point, stack cash, move into potentially a second acquisition, third acquisition, where you can go value-based. But along with that, there is obviously territory management elements, which could be limiting in terms of growth. But from what they have here, it looks like there is potential for continued growth even within this. This might not get to a 5 million range, but it can get to a 2 or 3 million range. So there's just a lot. I'm not going to go through all of this. There's 6 pages worth of stuff, but there's a lot in line that makes this a good deal with juice to squeeze. And at the price point, there's a lot of juice to squeeze. And so, I think I mentioned in one of my other videos, we're in the process of doing some visa work so I can start really taking advantage of US banks. This is actually a deal I might even consider. I like the numbers that much. And so this is what I mean by like the numbers that much. It's a very good structures, right? 1.6 million revenue, 500,000 in cash flow, which in their document, they actually say it's 600,000. But this might be current year to date or on track for. I'm adjusting for an owner or a general manager to come in, just because, again, if this is not value based, this is going to be all about driving cash flow. I wouldn't want to be spending 60 hours a week on it, maybe to start, but immediately after, move in, put a general manager in place, and make this more of a part-time focus of business and operations, where I can just, if anything, drive strategy, but I don't want to be driving the day-to-day operations of folks picking up and dropping off units. So adjusted cash flow here, 400,000. Asking is only 1.15. This, as much as I put an aim scenario here, I probably wouldn't even go and try and renegotiate this much. At most, maybe I'd drop this down to $1 million flat, and just for the sake of trying to get this as close to a 3 times multiple as possible. But the reality here is, they're not asking a lot. They're really not. And actually, I'm not sure why this is showing. Oh, this is hard set. So this should just be 2.6. There we go. So that's why I wouldn't really adjust the price. This is already sub 3. Seller finance would be the only real area of ask, right? I wouldn't care too much about dropping this to 1, but I would say, hey, give me like 20-25% seller finance, just so that way I know you're actually going to give some transition time. That way I also don't need to go and bring up a bunch of cash and inject it into the company. I can work with the SBA on that. And, then from there, it's just, straightforward SBA loan. You're cash flowing 2-3 times. There's more than enough left over to place a general manager if you didn't decide to take this into account up here. So even if we took this out, there's more than enough here to pay general manager 90 grand, 100 grand a year. And considering this isn't a high stress business, while they're going to be managing a decent chunk, this isn't going to be like a hotel. They're not on call 24 hours a day type of thing. 90 or 100 grand, I'm sure, is more than enough for a very solid GM who's going to take all that stress off your plate, and to still be able to cash flow, 3 times, 2.5 times. you're going to be able to still pay yourself 100 grand plus a year out of this. So this is why I look at this exactly like a storage unit type of deal, where you're not going to pay yourself, $500,000 a year, but you're going to get that 1 to 200 grand a year. It's going to be passive in terms of your time. You're not going to be spending 40 hours a week on it. Maybe it's an hour or two a day just managing, making through their financials are all set and solid. But it's going to be able to stack up cash for you, pay off itself, make sure you're well set up for another acquisition, or maybe even another franchise within it. Because it looks like they actually, if you go to their main site, they do have a lot of franchise opportunities and potentially can keep expanding in the area for very low cost and allow you to get to, one of these crazy dudes like the KFC guys, where they have these guys that own 60 franchise units, 100 franchise units, and just absolutely print cash because they understand operations or they have a good operation set up. So there's good potential here. That's effectively what I'm saying here in a long-winded way. Good business overall. But shout out to I apologize, I should have looked it up, but whoever it was that mentioned I should look at these businesses. It's cool business for sure, and a good area. So if you're interested in this business, there's going to be a link down below. But somewhat heads up, you might be against me in understanding this business a little bit more, because I'm kind of intrigued here.